So a lot has been happening in the past 24 hours with regards to Overwatch 2, and it's pretty safe to say and understandable as to why. But in this video, I want to kind of go over in more detail as to why I feel this information, or rather misinformation, and this negativity spreading needs to kind of stop, because it's only going to cripple and hurt the brand and community for Overwatch long term. And so I want to kind of go into my reasoning as to why I feel Overwatch 2 and their dev team, yes, they ran into some hurdles along the way, but I want to kind of address this and make it very clear that I don't think this was their intention. This is likely due to corporate coming into play, and with financing being such an important aspect of game development, and as someone who's worked in development for gaming over the past decade or so, I can perhaps try and provide some reasonable takes on this matter. So let's jump into the first point of the video, and that would be finance. So before I continue with this topic, I want to preface this by saying that this is solely my perspective on the matter, and because I've worked in the industry for over a decade with the likes of PR teams, development, and so on and so forth, I feel like I can give a realistic argument as to why I feel what Blizzard is doing right now is not necessarily a bad thing, but in fact can actually be a blessing in disguise long term. So let's get into the big picture, which is of course PvE, and why we're here in the beginning. So financing is perhaps the biggest obstacle that many companies have to deal with regarding PvE. And if we look at other companies like Nintendo or Capcom, we can clearly see that PvE requires a long time for development. And if we've been paying attention to Overwatch and their PvE announcement, it's only been about a few years, let's say three years or so, where the minimum amount of time that's needed to create a big ambitious project that is PvE, especially for a big franchise that is Overwatch, or just any franchise for that matter, is a minimum of at least 6 years. And that's because there's a lot that goes into PvE that's really at its core really fundamental in terms of building a project. And so when we're looking at Overwatch being such a brand that has been built upon PvP, firstly, we have to understand that Overwatch is a PvP driven game. It was built that way at its core. So PvE is a brand new experience that they're likely bringing into the table. And for that reason, it's going to take Activision Blizzard from a corporate level to basically have to think carefully about how they really use their financing to establish, or rather create, a brand new mode for a game that is solely built upon its PvP experience. And so many people from the outside will look at this and think, well, it's Activision Blizzard, they have lots of money. But while that may be true, they also have different divisions within the Activision Blizzard umbrella. They have the likes of Diablo, they have World of Warcraft, they have Hearthstone, they have Call of Duty, and of course, you got Heroes of the Storm. So there are a lot of other divisions within Activision Blizzard that money has to be divided into. It's not just Overwatch. It's a lot of other things that need to be implemented. Of course, you have to pay people too. There's labor costs, there's licensing agreements, there's a lot of logistics involved. So it isn't just a matter of Overwatch deserves to get PvE, so let's just make it and call it a day. No, that doesn't work that way, unfortunately. And once again, from the eyes of a consumer, when something doesn't go their way, the first knee-jerk response is disappointment or anger or frustration. And in this case, it's, in my opinion, a little bit of misinformation, because I do think, and I have to sympathize with Jared and the Overwatch team here when I say this, is that I don't think their intention was to just straight up cancel, or in this case scrap, the PvE experience for fans. I think what their intention was, of course, from the very beginning, was to embark on this ambitious project, but unknowingly there was a lot to consider. There are a lot of different factors involved, and it isn't just about you picking up a contract, signing it, and then going with it and expecting it to just fall into place. It just doesn't work that way. So this goes right back again to financial backing, where there are a lot of different elements to consider when investing into a brand as big as Overwatch, most importantly into a PvE type of experience. Because now what you're doing is you're having to delegate tasks from not just PvP, but also PvE. But we also have to consider that there are also global issues that have also contributed to the development process of Overwatch 2 and its PvE experience. We already know with the global pandemic and a lot of, other issues pertaining to allegations within the company, layoffs, all of these things likely contributed to the overall decision making when it came to PvE in Overwatch 2. Now, this will bring me into the second point, which I think will hopefully bring to light more of the reason as to why I think the corporate team decided on this, and that's likely due to the live service model. And the reason why I say this is really important moving forward is because we're seeing a trend nowadays of more live service model games being implemented, and we're seeing a lot of them, at least the bigger names, finding success. And we've seen that with the likes of Apex Legends, with Fortnite, and many other games on that list. Sure, we've seen some crash and burn, which is unfortunate, but I think what the corporate side of Activision Blizzard are trying to avoid is that very same fate, where they don't want Overwatch to become much like those unfortunate games where they tried to go too ambitious in a project to the point where it completely just flat out destroys the brand and the franchise and ultimately destroys the entire community. And that's not what we want. So all that being said, hopefully that has given you a simple gist of why companies don't just jump on the bandwagon, because there are a lot of things involved, labor costs, legal issues, all that sort. It really comes down to a lot of different things that need to be considered. It's not just put all eggs in one basket and we can just go forward. Again, from a consumer standpoint, I understand it's clearly disappointing and clearly emotionally, unsettling, but you have to also put yourself in the shoes of the development team and also the corporate side of things, and understand that this is not just something easily, doable. It is something that requires a lot of time. And unfortunately for PvE type of games, the development cycle takes years. And so that being said, let's move on to the next point. So the live service model has been a part of the gaming industry now for quite some time. And while there are some skeptics out there who may not favor the model, I, for one, am quite optimistic in terms of what it can provide for companies over the long term, as it really does help companies to really divide their tasks over the long term, giving fans more to perhaps chew on, if that makes any sense. And it kind of reminds me of like watching an episode of an anime or a TV show where the episode ends on a cliffhanger and now you're itching to know what's coming next. So what's the point of this? Live service kind of fits that same model where you are really anticipating what's to come. The whole point of a live service model is to basically give fans chunks, small chunks of the experience over the course of time. And in doing so, we see the likes of a battle pass, we see the likes of limited time events, and that's actually what creates a lot of the fun factor and what brings people back into playing the game. So imagine if, let's say, for example, that PvE was just one mode in itself and it was just given to us smack dab on the dinner plate as our full course meal. Sure, I'm sure many of us would be happy to see that PvE experience at its core being fully represented, but would we truly be enjoying it? How long would we enjoy it for is the question. At this core moment, emotionally, yes, we are clearly disappointed by the decision that they had to make. But again, when you look at the big picture, would we have enjoyed the experience had it been under-delivered? Would we have enjoyed the experience if that full PvE experience came out less than what we expected? I'm sure we'd be even more angry if it took them that long and then they released it to very lackluster performance. And we've seen this in other games, which I won't go into detail of, but I'm sure you are already aware of some of the examples. But the point is that live service models give companies some leeway with regards to how they develop and release their projects, or at least their content, over time. And so by giving players a small chunk of the experience over subsequent seasons, in this case PvE, because what was clearly stated in the interview with regards to Overwatch 2 PvE was that yes, there are some aspects that had to be scrapped, and that is very unfortunate. However, what most publications failed to represent and inform their members, or at least their readers, about was that PvE is still coming in the form of story missions, and this was further emphasized and clarified by Jared himself on Twitter. So it's very, very clear that the PvE experience is not going anywhere. It's just that there are certain elements that were promised that unfortunately had to be, again, scrapped for perhaps, again, unknown reasons. But as I've already mentioned earlier in the video, those reasons likely came down to financing and just having to try to mitigate risk over time. So, live service. Why is it so great for Overwatch 2 and its story-driven PvE? Well, what it can do is very much like Genshin, it can split up the resources, or at least split up the story into subsequent patches. So much like Genshin, for example, you're going to have one big patch where it gives you one big core chunk of the story, and then players can enjoy that experience for that one season, and then you wait for a while. And while you're waiting, you're, again, building that momentum, building that anticipation for what's to come. And I think that is a good thing for the overall PvE, because it'll treat it more like an actual show or an anime, where now you're really trying to, you're getting excited for what's to come. You're itching for the new experience, you're itching for the new part of the story to come into fruition. And I'm sure people have enough patience to wait, because once again, this is a PvE experience. So in the meantime, while you wait, you can enjoy the likes of limited time modes, you can enjoy new skins, you can enjoy the battle pass, and of course you can enjoy the PvP, which again is really at its core what Overwatch is all about. So if you're only here for PvE, I hate to break it to you, but that's just the way things are sometimes. Companies are always going to scrap projects, whether you like it or not. That's just how the game industry works. That's just how a lot of industries work. And if you're new to that, again, I hate to break it to you, but it's nothing new. This is nothing new in the industry. It's very common practice to scrap projects that are way too ambitious, likely due to financial situations that just are not feasible. But it's okay, because again, I feel optimistic that what the Overwatch team is trying to do now is really utilize the live service platform as an advantage by giving us those small pieces of the pie over time and letting us really soak in the material slowly, as opposed to giving it to us in one full swoop and then perhaps we may not enjoy it. So that being said, let's move on to the last point. Let's go. Now, as much as I would like to cover every single detail about how the industry works in this video, it's not going to be that simple. There's a lot of complexity involved when it comes to explaining these things. I really just wanted to make it very simple and straightforward and address the fact that, again, a lot of times when we see these announcements made, a lot of the reaction is very knee-jerk, and it's not really that simple when it comes to decisions like this. So to immediately jump the gun and claim that a game is dead when clearly the game isn't, is really misrepresenting the game, but also representing the community. And I think we as a community need to take this with a little bit more optimism, but most importantly, take it with less of this doom and gloom mindset, where the moment we see something that we don't like, we have to immediately, point the finger or claim that the game is dead, when clearly that is not the case. When a game is truly dead, I'll give you an example. Babylon's Fall is a dead game. Overwatch 1 is a dead game. Why? It's because these games can no longer be accessed. Their service is completely gone. You cannot go back and download these games and play them from the beginning. That is the definition of a dead game, where the game is completely inaccessible to anybody, regardless, and the player base is at zero. There's no financial backing in the game. Literally, the company gives out an announcement stating that this game is no longer in service. That is the definition of a dead game. Overwatch 2 is far from that. Overwatch 2 is thriving right now. Overwatch 2 is in a very good position, and in spite of a lot of the issues that the game is going through, that's the growing pain of every single game that is released on the market. There are always going to be growing pains with every live service game that is introduced, and we've seen many examples of this. So what's important here is we try to drive home a more positive mindset moving forward, and at the same time, just a more realistic perspective. Yes, again, I need to reiterate this, there are going to be moments of, discouragement. There are going to be moments where we just don't get what we want. But that does not mean that you should quickly have a knee-jerk response and immediately doom and gloom post and make the community look like we're just a bunch of toxic members in the community. Because from the outside in, we as content creators, we as influencers are there to influence. And so the moment that a new player coming into Overwatch 2 sees all this doom and gloom saying how this game is dead, well, you as a creator, you as the influencer have now given off a negative response, a negative energy to that person or that group of people who could potentially be the next big thing in our community that we really truly need. We want to embrace more people in the community. We want to be more inviting, and we want to contribute that in the best way possible. Yes, being constructive is totally fine. I think that's obviously part of the realistic aspect of being a creator. But taking that to the next level and misinforming people and misrepresenting the community, I think is not very healthy at all. And I think that's where we need to kind of turn the tables, or at least shift gears and become more representing in terms of our brand and what we represent for the Overwatch community. And so I wanted to just make that point very clear, that we are here to introduce and bring new players into the scene. And the best way to do that, I think, with regarding this whole live service model and how Activision Blizzard is trying to implement this new service into Overwatch, I feel like moving forward, we need to be more encouraging. We need to be a little bit more, again, optimistic about what Overwatch is trying to do for the long term, and not just see things as, oh, it's not working for me, or oh, it doesn't work for me, so therefore it doesn't work for anyone else. Looking for that type of validation in other people is not healthy. And I think it's good to, yes, have your own perspective on things, but it's also just as important to not allow your negativity, not allow your toxicity to project itself onto other people unsuspectingly, unknowingly, and as a result, now you're creating an image of a community that maybe people initially wanted to be a part of, but because of the misinformation, because of the lack of information pertaining to the issue, now these potential players who wanted to come into the game are now running away from it because you scared them away due to your projecting. So all that being said, again, I hope this video has given you a simplistic look at what it means to Overwatch 2 in the community, why this decision had to be made, and hopefully it has given you some perspective moving forward. So thank you so much. I didn't want to make this video too long. I just wanted to get myself out there and just pour my heart out. So yeah, thank you so much. I'll see you folks next time. New Warriors, as always, thank you so much for tuning in and supporting me. I'm so grateful for that. Take care and peace out.